Hola, clase. Senior Boyle here. We have a little bit of note taking for you to do. My head looks very orange, right? Isn't that weird? It's like so goofy. What if I go like that? It's a little bit more normal colored, but anyway, I guess we'll deal with the me looking like a orange head, like a pumpkin head. Okay, so I'm sorry that I do not have prefabbed notes for you. So what you're going to have to do is kind of take notes. I'm going to go through this lesson as quickly as I can, but you're going to just have to hit pause. You might have to hit rewind a couple times. I hope you don't have to do that, but you may have to hit pause a few times to make sure you have the right notes. So I need you to just grab a piece of paper, something to write with, and we're going to talk about what we call the perfect tense. Now we've kind of mentioned this in class several times, and I've talked to Brendan about this. He asked me about it, and we had conversations back and forth quite a bit, and Brendan's table, but we've never really presented a concise lesson to you. I'm hoping that this lesson is concise, and I want to take it in little pieces because I don't want to take up tons and tons and tons of your time. So I'm gonna give you the notes. Then I'm going to just give you some practice on irregulars. And then tomorrow we'll just keep on, we'll just take little steps forward, okay? So, all right, what we're talking about here is, oh, Yoda. Sorry, Yoda. If you've learned something the wrong way, Yoda has this advice. You must unlearn what you have learned. Okay, so today we're going to learn what the perfect tense is, when it's used, and how to conjugate past, present, future, and conditional perfect tenses and indicative and subjunctive moods of the verb haber. Okay, we're not doing number 3. Okay, we're going to do number 1. We're going to do number 2. And really, letter 2B would be how to form a past participle. A past participle is part of the expression that you'll use. Okay, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So here's what it looks like. What is the perfect tense? Well, it's taking the verb haber, which really means to have. It's an auxiliary verb, and adding to it a main verb that in many cases, in English ends with ed. So I could say, I have lived. We have the verb to live. I could say, I lived. I lived on that street for 5 years. Or I could say, I have lived in Potsdam for 5 years. What's the difference? Well, there's a difference in how it relates to our present tense. One of them is preterite, one of them is one of them is preterite, one of them is perfect. I lived for 5 years there is a completed action that happened and is done. That's preterite. I have lived for 5 years. That's still going on. So the perfect tense is still happening. Perfect tense relates to the present tense. So if I say, I have lived there for 5 years, I'm still living there, okay? All right, so here's a couple of examples. I have studied is present perfect. So I have is present tense. He had wanted. This is past perfect. Something happening in the past. They have been stranded. This is a little bit more of a complex way of saying what we want to say. And then at the end of this program, we will be able to say, or by the end of the program, they will have reviewed all the materials. This is a future they will have. It's just a future form of the perfect. This last one, we're not going to deal with right now, or I'm not sure we'll deal with it this year because it's just crazy, but this is a past subjunctive phrase. If you had only studied more, with conditional, you would have passed. And it's both of them are compound. This is probably one of the most complex things you'll say in Spanish, and I hope to teach you that someday. Okay, the next part is a little bit more of how we construct the perfect tense. So it's a compound tense, meaning there are two verbs. The aux verb, which is the verb haber, and the main verb, which is whatever verb you're dealing with, whether it's lived, studied, eaten, whatever it is. And so in this case, I have studied. Have is the aux verb, which is haber, and the main verb is studied. He has written. It has is the aux verb. Written is the main verb. We have been stranded. So have is the aux verb, and been stranded is kind of a been is a past participle, and stranded is an adjective. So those are three different ways that we'll deal with the perfect tense here in this lesson. Okay, the next part says, what we're saying is, when do we use this and why do we use it? What is it that we're expressing when we're talking about the present perfect? Well, like I said before, if you say that you did something in the past in the preterite, we're basically telling you it happened one time. So, hey, yesterday I mowed the lawn, Dad. I did it. It's over with. And it really doesn't have any bearing on my present situation. I did that. But if I want to relate it to the present tense, I could say, hey, Dad, I have mowed the lawn. And somehow I'm inferring that that has more of an effect on my present situation. In other words, I don't want to get in trouble. So in Spanish, I'm reading right off the screen. The present perfect is used to describe an action that began in the past, but it's continuing into the present, or it has some kind of effect or bearing on the present in some kind of way. Here are some examples. I have studied, and I do it regularly now. I have done it. Okay, I've studied Spanish. I've spoken Spanish. I have eaten pizza my whole life. I'm still going to do it. I'm doing it regularly now. I've studied with Maria, and I might study with her again. I've done it, and I'm probably going to do it again. Okay, so let's talk about past participles. This is the main verb. The verb haber, we'll talk about that later in another section. And I do have notes on haber. But let's talk about that second verb. Let's talk about that past participle verb. How do you form it? Well, with AR verbs, you just drop the ending and you add ado. And I think you probably already know this. So with hablar means to speak. If we want to say spoken, we say hablado. So I could use I have hablado. I have spoken. So yo he hablado is I have spoken. Trabajar. I have worked. I could just drop the ending and add ado, and I have trabajado. Trabajado is worked in the sense of the past participle. I have worked for 5 years, blah, blah, blah. So yo he trabajado 5 años. Okay, so that's AR verbs. What are you going to do with ER-IR verbs? Well, you're going to add ido to the ending. So drop the ER ending rather, and then add ido. So comido means eaten. Vivir, we're going to add IDO. We're going to basically, vivido means lived. Now, the difference between these and the preterite is clear. I have eaten, yo he comido, versus I ate, yo comí. Vivir, I have lived, yo he vivido, versus I lived, yo viví. Okay, so it may be like confusing because in English, lived is a past participle and it's also the preterite form, but not in Spanish. In Spanish, we have different forms, which I think is easier and more clear. Okay, let's keep going here. Now that you know how to do all of the past participles, let's talk about some irregular forms of a past participle. Here are a whole bunch. We have abrir, cubrir, decir, escribir, freír, hacer, morir, poner, resolver, romper, ver, volver. So these you can't just drop the ending and add ido. With these, you have to have a special spelling. And here it is. So abrir, to open, we're going to say abierto. I have opened the window. Yo he abierto la ventana. Cubrir, to cover. I have covered. Cubierto. Okay, once again, you're probably going to want to take notes on this. You may have to pause a little bit in between these or at the end. I don't know, whatever you want to do. Decir is dicho. I have told you a million times. Yo te he dicho millones de tiempo or millones veces. Escribir is escrito. To fry, I fried my eggs. Yo he frito. Hacer is hecho. Morir is muerto. Poner is puesto. Resolver is resuelto. Romper is roto. Ver is visto. And volver is vuelto. Okay, those are the irregular forms of the past participle. I'm going to hit the next slide right now. Now, there's only one other thing you need to remember, and that is that this list of verbs, what we're going to do with these is we're just going to say that, whoopsie, went too far. We're just going to say that they do take on the ido form, all of them. It's not a special spelling, except that each one of these needs an accent mark on the I. So atraer, to attract, turns into atraído, like you would think it would, but there's an accent mark. Caer, caído, accent mark. Creer, creído. I've always believed what he told me. Yo siempre he creído. I have read many books. Yo he leído muchos libros. Oído, poseído, reído, sonreído, traído. All need an accent mark on the I. Okay, I don't want to go any further. I want to leave it like this. The rest of today's work is basically you practicing on Quizlet for the irregular forms. Okay, we'll take this a little bit further tomorrow, and I hope you have a great day.